Can't Shadow smile? Why? For the same reason Sonic can't cry? Believe it or not, Sonic characters follow strict rules that you probably never noticed. Let's explore what other things Sonic characters are forbidden to do. Have you ever stopped to think that Sonic is
a complete
psychopath? There are times when, no matter how difficult the situation gets, it seems like he doesn't have any feelings about it. Or there are times when his friends die right in front of him. Sonic continues as if nothing happened, not even crying when Shadow died right beside him. This rule, set by SEGA, ensures that Sonic always stays true to his personality and doesn't change. Specifically, Sonic can't show any strong emotions, like crying excessively or showing deep sadness. No matter how many of his toys you break, Sonic will never cry. SEGA did this to maintain Sonic's personality, hope, and optimism. Follow me. So no, Sonic is not a psychopath. You thought Amy and Sonic were a couple, right? Well, the truth is they're not, my friends. It might seem like some characters already have their destined partners, but according to SEGA, none of the characters can have romantic relationships. That's why we've never seen Sonic and Amy kiss or act like a couple. Besides, if we remember, Sonic can't show extreme emotions, so of course Amy is going to feel like Sonic doesn't really love her. An interesting fact is that in the comics, Sonic did have a girlfriend, and I'm talking about Sally. But since SEGA made this rule, they immediately stopped being a couple. The only ones exempt from this rule are Bonnie and Anthony in the Archie comics. Have you ever wondered if Sonic has a family? And I'm not talking about friends who became family, I mean blood relatives, a brother, a mom, a dad. Unfortunately, according to the rules, the main Sonic characters can't have direct family ties to keep the story less complicated. But actually, before this rule was created, Sonic did have parents, and I'm talking about the Archie comics where his parents were roboticized. His father was Jules the Hedgehog, his mother was Bernadette the Hedgehog, his grandfather was Maurice the Hedgehog, and his uncle was Sir Charles the Hedgehog. In fact, several proposed relatives for the main characters were flatly rejected by SEGA. So yes, Sonic is an orphan with no parents. And now let's move on to a rule that might seem really good for us, but may be a super torture for poor Sonic. The thing is, for the franchise to keep going and never end, Sonic can't be defeated in any imaginable way. Sonic is impossible to defeat. So, even if you throw a Genkidama at his head, Sonic is going to stay alive. Dad, what do you think about that girl? Although Goku did get breaks every now and then after dying. So for the next Sonic movie, with this rule, we already have the answer. Sonic is always going to win. And it's the same with the other main characters' friends, except for Shadow, of course. Why Shadow? And speaking of Shadow, let's talk about one of his most controversial rules, which is that Shadow is completely forbidden from smiling. This is because SEGA wanted it to be very clear in the character's image, so he would never lose that continuity. In fact, a very interesting curiosity is that the only person Shadow can smile at, or at least try to give a smile to, it's with his best friend, Maria. We've seen this in some games, although the truth is that smile feels a bit forced, don't you think? It's not that Shadow is bitter or always angry, it's that SEGA forbids it. Shadow is also forbidden from showing positive emotions, at least the really obvious ones. And now that I think about it, I believe this rule actually fits the character really well, since I can't ever imagine Shadow jumping for joy or even giving Sonic a thumbs up. Something interesting they added to the characters is that they're forbidden from aging. We'll never get to see Grandpa Sonic hanging out with Old Man Shadow and elderly Tails. No matter how many years or centuries go by, Sonic and his friends will always look the same and perform the same. Is aging forbidden? I mean in their adult form, since if we remember, on some occasions we have seen baby or young versions of the characters. This rule connects with what we said earlier, that they are never going to be defeated. Have you ever wondered why Sonic games rarely include a definitive timeline? It's no coincidence. SEGA avoids anchoring the series to a concrete chronology. They keep the events vague. The creators make sure that each game is accessible to everyone, whether they're new players or lifelong fans. Have you ever wondered why Sonic never wears pants? In fact, there's a rule that none of the male characters who aren't human can wear pants. So we'll never get to see Sonic in shorts or disco pants. He's only ever going to be naked wearing his sneakers. Although there's only one exception for all characters like this, and that's 9. He's the only one we've seen break this rule since he wears shorts. Maybe this is because they wanted to make a noticeable difference between Tails and 9. And speaking of clothing, one of the most iconic elements of Sonic's design is his shiny red shoes. But did you know there's a rule about these? Also, Sonic's sneakers aren't just for style, they're an essential part of who he is. According to SEGA, Sonic's sneakers are what allow him to run at supersonic speeds without friction, preventing his feet from being destroyed by heat and friction. This means that Sonic can never take them off while he's running, not even for a moment. Without his sneakers, Sonic wouldn't be the same hero we know. In fact, there's a little-known curiosity about Sonic's story, which suggests that his sneakers were a gift from an inventor who wanted to help Sonic reach his full potential. Although this backstory has only been hinted at in some adaptations. The curious thing is that SEGA has made it clear that taking off his sneakers is off limits, at least visually. Because in fact there have been times when Eggman swaps his sneakers, like in Sonic Labyrinth. But, well, the same thing happens with his gloves. Does anyone know why Sonic can't take off his gloves? Did you know that Sonic can't stay still for very long? If we look at him, he's always doing something, unable to stay in one place, not doing anything. Sure, Sonic can sleep too, but sitting in a chair to reflect on how to pay his debts? Not at all. He'll always be moving, keeping his mind busy with something. The biggest rule in Knuckles' whole life is to protect the Master Emerald. It's pretty much his only purpose in life, which might sound really sad, but actually it makes him very happy. That's until they take the Master Emerald. Then he teams up with Sonic to fight evil. Eggman follows a very specific rule with Sonic, and that is, despite their rivalry, Eggman only prefers to capture or humiliate Sonic in a way that's not too extreme. This is so that the possibility of facing each other again in the future remains open. Can you imagine what it would be like to see the super form of Tails or Knuckles in the next Sonic movie? Well, that's not going to happen, my friends. The only ones who are allowed to use the super form are the male hedgehogs. And I know. True Sonic fans might say that Super Knuckles and Super Tails do exist in Sonic 3 and even other games. But I'll say it again, all of this existed before these rules were set by SEGA. So for the new Sonic games, or even movies and series, we won't see these super forms of other characters again. Mobius is the planet Sonic comes from, but did you know that it's forbidden to use the name Mobius for any Sonic game, movie, or series? This might seem strange, but for some odd reason, the writers are not allowed to use the name Mobius to refer to Sonic's planet. The inhabitants of this planet also can't be called Mobians, and maybe only in the novelizations will we be able to see and hear the name Mobius, but in actual productions, we'll never get to hear it. Did you know that SEGA has a rule about Sonic's humor? Sonic can make jokes and sarcastic comments, but his humor should never seem mean-spirited. The goal is to portray him as confident and playful, not arrogant or cruel. This is key to keeping Sonic likable while highlighting his bold personality. Did you know that Sonic and his friends also have limitations in their abilities and powers? Although Sonic is known for his incredible speed, SEGA has specifically restricted the exact speed he can reach. Sonic can run faster than the speed of sound, but he will never be able to reach the speed of light, since that would just make him too powerful compared to other characters. That's why Sonic doesn't break the sound barrier in every scene, nor does he travel through dimensions with every step. But this is where things get interesting, my friends. In the comics, Sonic's speed has sometimes been portrayed as almost unlimited, with feats like escaping a black hole or running so fast that he bends time itself. However, in the games, series, and movies, SEGA makes sure his abilities are consistent and more grounded. This is to keep Sonic consistent for the players, because if Sonic were unstoppable, there would be no tension in his races against Time or his battles against Eggman. Also, Knuckles' strength, even though it's immense, is limited to make sure he doesn't overshadow the rest of the team. Even though he's able to break walls and rocks, there's always a limit to his power in order to maintain balance in battles. Another interesting fact involves Tails. As a genius inventor, Tails has created some of the most advanced technologies in the Sonic universe. However, SEGA has a rule that prevents Tails' inventions from completely replacing Sonic's abilities. For example, even though Tails can build machines that help the team travel, he will never invent something that makes Sonic's speed irrelevant. This is so that each character retains their unique and useful traits. And speaking of characters, did you know that SEGA is very strict about introducing new characters? Even though we've seen dozens of characters come and go, SEGA avoids adding too many new characters in a single game or series to prevent the story from becoming overcrowded or confusing. That's why we often see favorites like Rouge, Blaze, and Silver return, instead of completely new characters. Another rule has to do with Sonic's color palette. Sonic's main colors, blue and white, cannot be drastically changed. No matter the setting or the timeline, Sonic's iconic appearance remains consistent to ensure that he is easily recognizable. And finally, there's a rule that there can only be one Metal Sonic, not 2 or 3, just one. Why? Leave your theories in the comments. And those are the strict rules that Sonic and his friends have to follow. Do you know any others? What do you think about these rules? Do you think they're followed 100%? See you in the comments.